Megan, what are your initial thoughts on this episode?
I absolutely love this one. It was an episode that feels so relevant at this moment in time that it was almost a little bit hard to watch. But while I was thinking about it and reflecting on it, I came to the conclusion I really feel like this episode is mainly about mirrors and people holding them up and people looking into them and people operating in the shadows to make people use those mirrors more effectively. So I think you saw this very much in the Cardassian Rebellion, where you've got Kira still instructing Damar and Rusat and everyone on how to actually lead a rebellion, and Garak kind of being the conscience of the revolution from the shadows. Really interesting. The same basic thing is playing out with Ezri and Worf and the corruption in the Klingon government. And I think similarly, to a lesser extent, Bayun with the Founders is having this moment of revelation for the first time as well and really understanding his place in the order of things. That was my high-level thesis on the episode. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and I'm sure we can dig into each of these kind of three parallel storylines over the course of our chat today.
Murphy?
Yeah, I think that's pretty succinct. It's an episode that concludes long-standing sort of overreaching arcs in Star Trek. I mean, the end of this one ends, a 7, maybe 9-year arc of Worf's, going back to almost the first season of TNG. We have what I possibly consider to be the best moment maybe the best moment in DS9, which is where Damar finds out that his family's been killed. And that look, my God, it sends chills down your spine. Everything about that, the way, and we can get into it, but oh, my goodness. It's perfect. Even you're seeing Sisko going even further into darkness when he says to Worf, I would appreciate it if something could be done about Gowron, knowing full well that he's nudging him towards assassination. It's such a good episode. It almost feels like it could be the end of the story itself, because the next one is sort of another of the last sort of one-off storylines. But it's just incredible. I love it. I love it so much.
What do you think, Tom? Did you see a high-level theme?
I'm going to take it in a little bit different direction because I saw this episode as an homage to the entire Star Trek oeuvre. Let's pick up with Gowron, Martok, and Worf. Worf killed Duras in TNG, which allowed Gowron to ascend to the chancellorship. I think that was 91 or 92. So basically, the entire run, Gowron has really owed his chancellorship to Worf. And here Worf ends his chancellorship. So I love that tie. The tie that I really love, though, was when Dax told Worf what he had to do, not as a man, but as a Klingon. That ties into TOS, Mirror, Mirror, where Captain Kirk tells the alternative Spock, if the Empire must fall in 200-something years because of its ruthlessness, what is the logic in serving an empire that you have determined will fall? And so that speech that she gave him, and as the American on this podcast, you're spot on the current political status of that episode, with a country that prides itself as a Statue of Liberty, and there's clear corruption at the top. I thought about that as well. But the Ezri Dax talk to Worf really, for me, was just a complete homage to TOS. And really, the tie, starting there through Worf killing Duras and bringing Gowron to the chancellorship up to this point, the darkness that we saw in Sisko that you alluded to, Murphy, I think is directly ties into the founder's sickness. Yeah. And that we have moved beyond anything beyond the pale in terms of ethics in the Federation. And whatever the bright, shining city on the hill was, it's suspended pending the results of this war.
Yeah.
And that was just, yes, I'm asking you to engage in political assassination of an ally because we don't like the way our ally is acting. Who does that sound like right now? I love that. That sequence of Damar finding out about his family, Kira with her words, and then Garak. I would add that completes that cycle because Garak said you had to say that.
Yeah.
You had to do that. And at that moment, what I saw in Damar's eyes, in Damar's eyes was, this is the birth of a new Cardassian, and that he had to lose his family so he could break himself from the past of his glorification of what was a very evil empire and or planet. And that although that's horrible to lose your family, he saw a new path and a new way. And Kira made it clear to him through her outburst. So that whole trilogy, I love the 12th Night reference. Those who don't seek power but have it thrust upon them. So anytime you can throw in the Bard, I'm all for that. And Ezri, obviously, her symbiont has had a very long relationship with Worf, has been Worf's lover, has been Worf's mentor, yet she sees things a very different way than the other two symbionts. And she sees, I don't want to say the Klingon Empire for what it is, but she has a much clearer vision and a much clearer view. And this was really one of the first times I felt like she as a character broke away from the symbiont character to have her own opinions. So I really liked that. That scene for me was, because of the tie-up mirror in TOS, was the most powerful. But you're spot on the look. I don't know how they got Casey Biggs, how many takes they had to do to get that look. But you could not have,
right?
Yeah, you could not have painted a better look.
It's just that rage, that step that he takes, and that rage, and then that instant realization, the sort of softening of his eyes. He conveys so much with that look. It's got to be just one of the most important shots in all of Star Trek. I think it's a fantastic 10 seconds. Maybe my favorite of the whole series, yeah.
It's
just wonderful.
One of the moments after it, too, with Kira.
Get that much power from an actor's eyes. Either the actor has elevated themselves or they were that great all along. Gary Cooper was the one that comes to mind for me who could act the best with his eyes. Yeah. But you're absolutely spot on. Yeah. But the Garak part of that to me was equally important because Garak told Kira, you had to say that, you have to be this way, you have to make clear to them what this means on the most basic DNA human level possible. And he later tells her, basically, watch your back. And he's watching her back because Damar's lieutenant is pretty clearly upset with her after she whips his ass. So I enjoyed that part as well. Further thoughts?
On that interaction between Damar and Kira after Damar learns that his family has died, and he has had the realization is this is horrible but not unfair. I thought Kira's reaction was really interesting as well because she immediately kind of stepped back a little. She said that was stupid. And that's new for Kira Nerys. She has never backed off or stepped down like that before. She's always been keep pushing. And this time she felt she had gone too far. And I think it was really interesting how Garak responded to that and assured her that, no, this was the necessary decision. And it really highlighted for me in this episode how Garak has been the secret conscience or the secret instigator of this revolution from the beginning, from well before. It made me wonder how long has the Cardassian rebellion been his secret game plan and how much of his other actions have been leading directly to this moment. And I just thought this was a perfect snapshot of that working, where he's just, I've set everyone up in their places, and I need to make sure they do what I need them to do to make this happen. And I just thought it was so beautifully done.
You're seeing something interesting with Garak, right? You're seeing his orbit as he comes closer to returning to Cardassia. Like he can visualize the end of his exile.
Cardassia. Importantly,
Right.
the new
He can,
Cardassia.
but Garak sort of, he evolves emotionally, I think, the closer he returns to his homeworld. He starts off very cynical and he's this mysterious spy, but he meets another Cardassian, he meets Zial, and he opens up. The closer his orbit comes to more Cardassians. You see this when he's on the little asteroid and he's having small talk with these other Cardassian operatives. The closer he gets, the more of an evolved, sort of emotional human being, not Cardassian, he becomes. He's becoming more aware of his self and his feelings and his relationships with others. And it parallels his going home, which is a really powerful thing for him. And Zero's the same way. I think the two of them together are fantastic. I mean, I think there's a shot in this episode or the next where Garak is talking to Odo, and I had no idea you were this sick, I won't tell Kira. But the level of concern that Garak has for Odo is, you've never seen this before. He's actually starting to value relationships with people and not see them as sort of some kind of Machiavellian grand plan. That's lovely to see. Yeah. But yeah, I was also curious, I didn't realize about Mirror, but that brings up another really interesting point that you made, Tom, about endings and Empire's ending. We're going to see Damar, he says his Cardassia is dead and he won't be coming back anymore. And this Gowron and his corruption dies, and that's the end of that sort of arc. But there's another thing, if you tied it into Mirror and the end of the Terran Empire ending, that's how the alliance in the Mirror universe in DS9 starts. So it's interesting that you brought that up because it brings everything sort of full circle as we sort of looked at the Terrans coming back. And anyway, I thought that was a neat way to look at. That's really interesting.
I just see this was Garak's plan all along, and you guys just didn't see it. I thought he was a plant all along. Yeah. But there's one other story arc going on, too, that we didn't mention, and that is Dr. Bashir and O'Brien really chatting about Bashir's attempts to cure Odo. Mm-hmm. And did you guys think it was obvious they were going to have to bring in Section 31 at some point all along? Did at the end of the last episode where we got the fake medical reports, at that point, was it clear where this was going? Do you really think they wouldn't have kept the captain involved, or that was just trying to give him plausible deniability? But that was the third sort of plot line going on through this.
Yeah, I love.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. I loved O'Brien for the winning plan, the cunning coming in with the final idea. I think it makes sense that they didn't bring in Captain Sisko yet. They don't know the full extent of how far Sisko's now willing to go to do things or to have things done. And I think plausible deniability is maybe part of it, but also it's not clear to them that this will be the answer. I don't think they know for sure. I don't think there's any reason to believe, based on Section 31's actions, that they will officially have a cure. I think it is the last-ditch effort. And I think at this point, it's maybe a little too soon to bring in the Authority.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because Bashir he's sort of working on this a little. This is something I've sort of noticed over the arc with Bashir, that he's sitting in sickbay or his lab or his office, but he's always alone. He's always alone. Maybe I'm just noticing where's the extra staff, but he seems to have no medical staff. And I'm wondering if that's because Bajor's neutral and they've all been evacuated, or Starfleet hasn't sent anybody. But he seems to be carrying a lot of the weight of things on the station medically, and sort of he's the only one there with Jadzia. And it's weird that he's by himself. But I like that he has O'Brien. And this is, I think, one of the reasons they don't tell Sisko. This is their weird little pet project, right? I mean, this is another holodeck adventure for them. I think after the events of the sort of conference and Sisko knowing and not knowing about Section 31, maybe they wanted to keep everything, close to their vest. But it's a little game for them. And I think they're probably keeping Sisko safe, but it's very strange. And the way Bashir kind of snaps at O'Brien is weird. I found that a little strange.
Wasn't he on like 4 days with no sleep yet?
No sleep, yeah.
Yeah, that makes you a little
Did
sleepy.
you notice the cute little space Tupperware that he brought him his crab rolls in?
Yes.
It was cute. I like that.
I did.
Yeah, it was sort of nice.
Why don't we go around with the final thoughts? And Megan, since you started us off, you want to give us your final assessment of this episode?
Yeah, I thought this was an incredible one. I found it really impactful to watch. Almost, yeah, as I was saying, almost a little difficult to watch, just given what's happening in the world right now with friends and allies and governments and all of these things happening. It was hitting surprisingly hard for a TV show from the 90s. But I think the one moment we didn't really talk about together was that moment with Yoon and the Founder. Particularly when the Founder is talking to the Breen about how awful the Wayun is, and how if the cloning facility was up, he would absolutely be eliminated. And would you keep us updated on the progress of the new cloning facility? And it was the look on the Wayun's face immediately after that. And it was, I think it was one of the first times you see them kind of him expressing almost his own opinion rather than that sort of groveling obsequiousness, almost a clarity of, no, it isn't right that I'm being talked to this. And I just thought that was a really interesting little moment. And I can't remember in the next couple of episodes if that comes to anything, but I did think it was significant for him.
Yeah. You missed a really interesting moment in that conversation as well that I thought sent chills down my spine. When the Founder sits back and says, start rounding up civilians for interrogations, but what she says is the most fascist thing, start with scientists and teachers. She says that like very directly, I want you to go and round up the scientists and teachers you can find, knowing that the intelligentsia and the intellectuals are going to be the ones that's going to recognize and speak out and to torture and eliminate them first before the other civilians. That sent just shivers down my spine. It's a little throwaway line of dialogue, but wow. Yeah, really, very telling.
So you want to give it a final grade or final thoughts for the overall episode, Murphy?
I love this episode. I think it's one of the strongest in the last few. It's in contention for being one of the strongest in the series. Just, as I said, for that line between Damar and Kira, we're finally getting rid of Gowron after so many years. You know, war fought on the side of Gowron in the Civil War and helped him become Chancellor and has repeatedly clashed with him. Just so many weird little nods and endings. It's a really great episode.
The other observation I had is similar to TNG. At the end of TNG, the writing, the acting, everything just went up multiple levels, and I saw that in this episode as well. The arc of the Klingons and the Klingon Empire was probably the thing that impacted me the most. And the Duras to Gowron and now Martok arc is now in place. Dax basically telling Worf, are you a Klingon or are you just a follower? And if you're a follower of the most honorable man I know, or most honorable Klingon I know, there's no hope for the Empire. And I just thought it was, like I said, an entire homage to the oeuvre of the entire Star Trek series, going back to TOS. And if I ask you to think about it long enough, Murphy, you could probably point out in one of the movies, this is clearly why the Klingon homeworld blew up. That's probably a connection going forward.
Yeah, there's so much to analyze in this episode.
It was pretty clear we all enjoyed it. I look forward to our next episode, guys.
Bye.
See you next time.
Compliance Podcast Network. Start your mornings with daily compliance news, quick, sharp updates on the top compliance and ethics stories in under 5 minutes every morning in Compliance Podcast Network. Because compliance never sleeps. Need practical advice fast? Check out Compliance Tip of the Day. One actionable idea to level up your program. Short and sweet, every day on Compliance Podcast Network. Got 10 minutes? We've got the week's top 10 stories. 10 for 10 brings you the big compliance headlines. Fast, fun, and focused. Every Saturday on Compliance Podcast Network. And don't miss the Sunday Book Review, where compliance meets culture through must-read books and big ideas every Sunday in Compliance Podcast Network. Whether you're in the office, on a walk, or commuting, stay smart, stay ethical, stay tuned. Only on the Compliance Podcast Network, available wherever you listen to podcasts.